y'all don't really want it like that. Yeah. Here comes the.
Yo, what is going on YouTube? It's your boy Steezy A. Smith back in the building. Steezy A. Smith checking in for our second ever live stream on the channel. I mean, can't y'all believe that? Oh my gosh. It's been almost 2 years since we've been doing this YouTube thing. And to everybody that was there, that rocked with us a couple of weeks ago for our first ever live stream on Super Bowl Sunday, thank you so much. That was very last minute. It wasn't any promo. I didn't even know I was doing it up until the very last moment. And so because this is mainly a Seahawks channel, because we do focus on the Seahawks, hopefully there's a little bit more turnout this time around. But thank you guys so much for taking the time and joining me on this beautiful Saturday night. I know it's been real cold here in Seattle, so I hope you guys are keeping warm. I know we're kind of in the dog days right now of the NFL season, and so there isn't a whole lot going on. Free agency does not start until at least another couple of weeks, but hold on, that does not mean that there's nothing to talk about. There is still plenty to talk about, especially as it pertains to our Seattle Seahawks. Today, I'm going to have a multitude of guests kind of popping in and out, rotation style. We'll be talking about Bobby Wagner and his future in Seattle. We're going to be talking about your guys' take and your guys' stance on the whole Russell Wilson situation. We're going to be talking about free agents that Seattle absolutely has to retain. We're going to be talking about free agents that you guys would like to see Seattle retain. We're going to talk about our new defensive coordinator, Clint Hurt, and his expectations, your expectations for the defense. He's talking about a scheme in which he envisions, his team playing more aggressively. He's envisioning a scheme change, somewhere along the lines of a 3-4 base system. And so what does that mean for Jamal Adams? What does that mean for Carlos Dunlap? What does that mean for the rest of the guys? Are we going to bring back Rashad Penny? Is a franchise tag in play? There is so much to talk about. But joining me on this quest, like I said, I will have a couple of people hopping along. And so definitely be sure to expect that as we continue to progress on the show. I'm going to address some of the audience, though, right now. Nick, he is a mod. What's going on, Nick? How you doing, my brother? Lori. Hi, Steve. I'm on your toes. Lori, I hope you're having a wonderful time today. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Trixie, we have Steve A. Smith. Thank you, Trix. And then my brother Josh, of course, always doing his thing behind the scenes. Tyler Parcher, how you doing, Tyler? If you guys can give me just a second, though, I'm actually just waiting. Let me see. Brandon, I heard Zadarius Smith is going to be released. Hey, I think Zadarius Smith, I think he's a viable option for Seattle, especially defensively, when you consider the fact that, like I just said, 3-4, we're going to be going to more of a 3-4 based system. And so we'll see. I mean, notoriously, we're not really a team that would, we're not the type of team to go out and sign a whole bunch of outside free agents. We're not really the type of team to go out and throw money like that. And so, we'll see where that goes. My boy CJ, how you doing, man? Devin, what's up from New Mexico, bro? Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Reigns Palmer, keep Bobby. I want him to leave the game as most definitely. My man CG, what's going on, bro? How you feeling? Oh, Monday night. Hey, hold on. Before we get started, please, Monday Night Fight Talk. For those of you guys that are familiar, Dylan Brewski, my brother, 1/3 of the Bolts, and just so you guys know, he will be on in just a second. He just started a new channel. I know we talked about February 28th as the new launch day, but screw that. February 26th, we're a couple days early. Please, y'all, run it up on Instagram, run it up on Twitter, and run it up on YouTube. If you're a UFC fan, if you're a Dylan fan, if you're a sports fan, if you're a fan of the Bolts, if you're a Steezy A. Smith fan, please, it doesn't matter if you're a fan of this or that and this or that. Please, man, show my guys some love. Monday Night Fight Talk on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. And as you guys, of course, know, Squabo, my brother from another, he is going to be on the show in just a second. And so if you guys could please help my man get to 1,000. He also did just drop a video talking about what did we do with our masks as soon as, the pandemic is over. I thought that was a very intriguing topic, and it was a video well done. And so if you guys could please show those guys some love. And I will be having another special guest coming on later today. I don't think you guys are familiar with him just yet, so definitely stay tuned for that. I did also have a couple of other guys scheduled to come on the cast. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it just because of technical difficulties or whatnot, but if that does happen, we'll let you guys know. First super chat ever. Well deserved. Stay hungry. Josiah, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Corey Davis in the house. What's up, Corey? How you doing, man? Nick LeBeau. What's up, Dylan? Honored to be your fifth sub. Come on, y'all. Let's run that up, man. I want to see at least 20 by the end of the stream on Dylan's new channel. I want to see at least 20. Okay, but enough of that, y'all. It's time to get right into this. Look, like I said, this is the second ever live stream on the Steezy A. Smith channel. So please, definitely, you don't have to stay for the entire duration of the show. We're expecting around maybe an hour and a half, something like that. But we are gonna talk about Bobby Wagner. But if you're new here, real quick before we get started, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, not only for this channel, but as Squabo says at I had to go talk with Marcus on there. He might be on. But Monday Night Fight Talk. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, please. You know what? Let's get right into it. So according to Spotrac, the Seahawks are 8th in the NFL in terms of cap space, with just under $36 million in spending power. And that's as of today. I just checked the numbers. But Pete Carroll is on record saying that cap space could quickly dwindle just because there's guys like DJ Reid, there's guys like Sidney Jones, Quandre Diggs, Al Woods, Rashad Penny, Gerald Everett. There's a plethora of guys that are set to be free agents, and so we don't exactly know whether or not we actually do have $36 million in spending power. But that said, there are other ways to create cap space. And with Bobby Wagner set to enter the final year of his contract this season, he has the highest cap hit amongst all inside linebackers with $20.35 million. That's astronomical, and I understand he's still a top 5 linebacker in the National Football League. He might even be top 3, but Pro Football Focus, they don't seem to agree. I don't know how much stock you guys put into Pro Football Focus. I don't know how much you guys read. I don't know how much you guys pay attention to Pro Football Focus, but they graded him as the 15th best linebacker in the National Football League last year. He did miss a game, and he's not usually known for missing games. But I think what we can all agree on is he's definitely taken somewhat of a step back. He's not what he once was. I think in coverage, he's a little slower. He's not as fast. He's not as quick. He's not able to keep up with the rest of these guys. And so, look, I'm not saying we should release him. I'm not saying we should trade him, but I definitely do feel like we can extend him. But before I get into that, you know what? It's time to bring in one of my guests. He's 33% of the bolt, one of 3. Please welcome my man, Jordyn Brooks.
Hey, man, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me on, my man.
Oh, man, bro. Hey, I'm so proud of you, bro.
Thank you.
Man,
thank you.
Hey, Monday Night Fight Talk, please. Actually, no, I'm going to let you do the honors, bro. You got a channel you want to promote real quick?
Yeah. So I was here a little bit ago, and I heard you kind of allude to it. I am starting a new channel. It is called Monday Night Fight Talk. You can find that on Instagram at also Monday Night Fight Talk, and on Twitter. Monday Night Fight Talk was actually too long of a username, so I had to change it to MN Fight Talk. So you can find me on both of those. You can find me on YouTube. I will be premiering my first episode this Monday, February 28th. But decided to get started a little bit early, get my channel started a little bit early, and get my name out there a little bit. And I appreciate you, Steezy. I appreciate Squabo, who I'm sure is going to be on any second, for motivating me and for keeping on me, basically. You kept on me the whole time. You wouldn't let me give up, and I can't thank you guys enough. I know this is long overdue. And I thank all the supporters in advance that will watch my first video and from there on. But again, thank you to the most, because you guys have been my biggest supporters since day one.
Aw. Hey, Squad. I think I introduced Squad a little early, but hey, y'all, please don't forget to hit that subscribe. Monday Night Fight Talk yet again. Thank you, Dylan. And as you guys might or might not already know, my brother is in the house. As Squabo says, man, how are you guys doing?
Hey. Thank you so much. Me, they, them, all of us. We're all here having a great time.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the show. Look, this show is very monumental, okay? Steezy is cultivating the streaming game, the live show on YouTube, having a new format, bringing people on 10, 20 minutes at a time, working with schedules, bringing in big name celebrities. I don't know how he's handling it. I don't know how he came up with such a brilliant idea, but I'm sure it's going to be popping, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. Dylan, 3 days away from your channel, 2 days away from your channel debut. 2 days. I just went on every Instagram account I could find the password for to go show you some love. And YouTube as well. How exciting is it for you, Dylan? I just got back to my computer as you were going through, talking about the process, man.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for you. Like, there were times I know where we spoke and you weren't even sure it was going to happen. Like, you didn't even know if you were going to do it. You freaking did it, Dylan. You're doing it. Like, congratulations. Huge pat on the back.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, y'all, but now that that's set in stone, once again, Monday Night Fight Talk, don't forget, hit that subscribe, man. Again, I'm going to need at least 20 once the stream is over. But with that said, Dylan, I want to start with you, bro. What if you were John Schneider? What are you doing with Bobby Wagner? Are you extending him? Because if you were to extend him, you could shave off some of his cap hit. Like I said, amongst all inside linebackers, $20.35 million for a guy going into his age 32 year, for a guy who's not nearly what he once was. Are you doing that? Are you trading him? Are you restructuring his contract? What say you?
So what I'm thinking, because it seems like we are going to try and compete this year. We aren't going to go into the full rebuild like some people were speculating. At one point in the season, I was saying, let's do it. Let's just rebuild. Let's send it. But it seems like we're going to stay with what we got. So I say we try hard to restructure his contract, extend him out a couple more years. Nothing too crazy because, like you said, Steezy, he's in his 8th season. He's 32. That's, for a middle linebacker, that's kind of old, on the older side. So I don't want to do anything where we're signing him for 4 or 5 more years and he's playing until he's 37, and we just don't have the same Bobby Wagner anymore. But that being said, he is still a humongous part of this defense. He is still the best player really on this defense, and he's the quarterback of our defense. So I think right now we have to keep him for a little bit longer. I think Jordyn Brooks also benefits tremendously from having Bobby Wagner on his side, kind of teaching him the ropes, and then maybe a couple of years down the road, Jordyn Brooks can take the helm and he can be that quarterback of the defense, and then we can kind of explore getting rid of Bobby Wagner. That being said, if we end up trading Russell Wilson, if we end up deciding to go full rebuild, I'm not totally opposed to trading Bobby Wagner, because if you're at the point where you're trying to rebuild, you're not going to want a middle linebacker taking up as much cap as he is, no matter how good of a player he is, because by the time the rebuild is complete and we have a new team, Bobby's not going to be a big part of that team. So I think with what it looks like, where we're still trying to compete for a championship or a playoff spot at the least, I say we try to restructure Bobby's contract to extend him out a couple more years, and then we can go from there after that.
Okay, and then Squab. So I know before you and I, we've talked about how Bobby Wagner doesn't play a very prominent position in the NFL. There's also people bringing up Jordyn Brooks and Cody Barton, how we might already be set at linebacker without a Bobby Wagner. What do you say to all that? Squab, you're on mute, my brother.
Let's not overlook Bobby Wagner, gentlemen. First of all, he is a huge leader in our locker room. He means something to this organization, and the Seattle Seahawks organization has a bad history of treating players after their prime once they kind of are over the hump of their career, right? We're not known to pay those players and to show them love for what they've done for us in the past. And that is something that I want to see Seattle change. Earl Thomas, the way that he left Seattle was disappointing. It was sad. I hated seeing it. smeared what was a beautiful relationship for his entire career. He was one of our greatest players of all time. He was part of the Legion of Boom. He got us our first Super Bowl. And then to see him flipping off Pete Carroll on his way off the field because we didn't pay him and give him a contract, and then he had a season-ending injury that led into free agency where he left and ended up going on to Baltimore. So I don't want to see anything like that. I don't want to see us moving on from a star too early or not showing love to a guy that really meant a lot to our defense. He is one of the last remaining members from when our defense was Super Bowl caliber, and for that reason alone, he brings so much value to our locker room. I want to hold on to Bobby Wagner as long as we can. I really love him, and I don't want to see him go.
I totally agree, bro. So with Clint Hurt coming in as our new defensive coordinator, right? We have a guy that specializes in defensive linemen. And Sean Desai, Pete Carroll, and Carl Scott. We have guys that specializes in secondary play and defensive back play. Well, Ken Norton was our linebackers guy. With Ken Norton now no longer in the picture, it's like Cody Barton and Jordyn Brooks, for as good as they are, for as much potential as they might have, there isn't a single, I guess, leader amongst the linebacking core. And so for me, I'm all for extending Bobby Wagner, just because if we were to extend a Bobby Wagner, not only would we save up to $10 million in cap space this year, we can ensure that he retires in Seattle. Yes, he's nearing the end of his career, but we still need a guy that's going to be a leader, not just on the field, but in the locker room. And I feel like that would send signals to the rest of the franchise. Like, yo, we're in it to win it. We're going all in this year. And even though his play might be slipping, you know, we're not going to kick a guy to the curb like we have with Richard Sherman and other guys in the past. And so I definitely feel like a contract extension somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe a 1 or 2 year extension. Maybe you add like a void year or two to kind of make the numbers work a little bit. I think that'd be the most likely scenario as it pertains to Bobby Wagner. We don't necessarily need the cap space, but we're going to go out and sign guys outside of free agency. Let's say we swing a trade for maybe a Laramie Tunsil. We're going to need the extra money. And so I feel like for Bobby Wagner, his future in Seattle is to retire in Seattle. And I hope that comes with an extension. So for the extension, would you guys like to see what, a year, 2, 3 years? What?
I say 2.
So,
I think 2 years is going to be the best bet, because I think I'm with you, Squabbo, in the fact that I think that we should try to make a change and start treating some of these guys, because yes, Bobby Wagner is still playing at an extremely high level, but he's not in his peak anymore. We did see a very, very slight decline in his play this year. But I think 2 years, you can give him the proper amount of money without going into that 3rd, 4th year where you could possibly be paying him too much because his play has kept going down. I think in the next 2 years, his play won't go down too much. So I think that the 2 year mark is going to be a good, where we're happy because we still have the top tier linebacker in Bobby Wagner, but we're also not spending way too much money on him and blowing cap on him when he might not be playing at that caliber anymore.
Squab, how many years would you give him?
You know, I feel like this is a mirage of a question, right? Because we give him 3. We take them through 2, and then we extend them another 2, and then we extend, you know, and we change the numbers. We backload contracts and we negotiate different ways. Like, this is all like whatever contract, if they want him in Seattle, he'll be in Seattle, right? Right now, I would say 3 years. I'd say 2 on the safe side, because I understand where Dylan's coming from. But I think he's earned a 3-year contract, and I don't think in the next 3 years Bobby Wagner is going to fall off so dramatically that we don't want him in Seattle. I think he's in extremely good shape. He obviously takes this extremely seriously. He has had injuries in the past, but it's not been a consistent thing. And once again, he brings so much to this locker room from a leadership standpoint, from a mentality standpoint, from a versatility standpoint. He can do a lot of different things, and we can find a use for him. I'd say 3, because if we go 2 years into the 3, we can just move off the contract, because we always find a way to do that. NFL teams always find a way to do that with the players that they really care about. And I think 3 years sends a message like, hey, we really do care about our players that have been here for the long run.
No doubt. Oh, all right, and not that one. Okay, y'all. So and I just want to clarify. I know this is on there, but I have 15 to 20 minutes with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, about 2025 left.
About 2025. Okay. So we are gonna circle back to the Bobby Wagner topic once our next guest comes along. But we'll move on to the next topic. So as you guys know, we have 3 free agents on that starting offensive line. Left tackle Dwayne Brown, center Ethan Posick, and right tackle Brandon Schill. Obviously, Russell Wilson hasn't been very happy with protection. And so with all that cap space and all the resources and flexibility that we have at our disposal, what's your guys' ideal starting 5? Oh, let's not show mine. What's your guys' ideal starting 5? Oops. What's your guys' ideal starting 5 as it pertains to the offensive linemen? Whoever wants to go first, go on ahead.
Squabble, I'll let you go. I went first last time.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, Steezy, I thought it was so interesting. You introduced it in such a sexy tone. Like you were like, we have 3 new starters on the offensive line. Like it got real romantic there for a minute, Steezy. I'm getting a little uncomfortable. But in terms of those 3 starters, I agree with you. This could be such a beautiful picture for next year. If we can just bring in the right pieces. It's about priorities. It's about how much we care about fixing our offensive line for Russell Wilson and amending a relationship that's obviously had some troubles. I say we go all in. And I've listed some of these players before. I say these are the 3 players Seattle goes after. I am adding 1,019 pounds to this offensive line with just 3 players. Wow. 380, 319, and 320. So these are some big boys. They're not going to need many bricks in their back pocket. Cam Robinson, left tackle out of Jacksonville, our new left tackle. Damian Lewis, left guard. Center Ryan Jensen from Tampa Bay. Right guard Gabe Jackson, he stays. And right tackle, this one's my favorite, Trent Brown. Okay, maybe my second favorite because I love centers. But Trent Brown is a behemoth of a football player. He is ginormous, 380 pounds. Get this. Of our 3 additions, so Cam Robinson is 6'6", 320. He gave up 1 sack last year. Wow. Ryan Jensen is 6'4", 319. He played top 10 or 11 in terms of the amount of snaps compared to other centers in the league. He only gave up 2 sacks all year. Trent Brown, 6'8", 380 at right tackle, gave up 1 sack himself. So a total of 4 sacks by 3 offensive linemen. That's who I want to bring in for Seattle.
Wow. Okay. Dylan.
So I think that we're going to try to maybe spend money elsewhere also. So I'm only going to add 2. And unfortunately, Squabo, it's 2 of yours. So I have nothing new to bring to the table. So left tackle, I'm with you, Squab. Trent Brown, man. He is just an absolute monster. And as much as I've loved Dwayne Brown over the last few seasons, we saw a big dip in his play. And it's very, very tough to see that. And I am appreciative of him, but I think it's time to move on from him at left tackle. And Trent Brown would be a huge addition to that left side. I'm with you, Squabo, again on the left guard. Keep Damian Lewis. Damian Lewis has been fantastic so far. So I don't see a big point in getting rid of him. Center, I am also with you. Bring in Ryan Jensen. I think that is the best case scenario because Ryan Jensen is on the Buccaneers. We don't really know what's going on with the Buccaneers roster with Tom Brady leaving. Are they going to be able to get another quarterback and compete, or are they kind of going to fall off very, very quickly? So I'm going to say Ryan Jensen or any of the other really big name centers because unfortunately Ethan Posick just isn't cutting it anymore. And then right guard, keep Gabe Jackson there. He's a very good veteran and I like him being on there. And then right tackle, I say for now we keep Brandon Shell there just because he has been good. I mean, granted, he does have some injury problems. He was out quite a bit last year. But if he can stay healthy, he is a decent enough right tackle to where I think we can keep him there and be okay, not necessarily in a lot of trouble with him there at the right tackle position.
All right, so I don't know if you guys were able to get a little peek at my ideal starting five, but before I bring it up, I do just want to say, what do you guys think about Dwayne Brown potentially playing right tackle? Do you guys think he's capable, or do you guys think he wished to remain left?
We saw him in the Pro Bowl a couple of years ago. I don't know if y'all remember that. He got right tackle against Von Miller. Von Miller is our division rival now. And Dwayne Brown didn't look good. So I'd say no.
No. And no? I mean, he's had so much experience at the left tackle position. Unfortunately, offensive line isn't like defensive line where you can just switch sides and be all right. Like right tackle is very, very different from the left tackle position. So having a guy that at his age, no offense to Dwayne Brown, I'm not going to sit here and act like you're 100 years old, but in football years, you're about 100. So I think having to teach him basically an entirely new side of the offensive line would be very, very bad when we can keep Brandon Shell for probably a much, much cheaper price too.
Wow. Well, I've been on record saying this, and I'm gonna say it again. I'm not married to my statements. My statements, I think they tend to be very fluid. And so I don't think I'm gonna have Dwayne Brown at right tackle for us permanently. But for now, let's bring it in.
Jason.
So at left tackle via trade, Laramie Tunsil of the Houston Texans. At left guard, this should actually be Damian Lewis, not Gabe Jackson. So I don't know what was going on there. Left guard, we'll keep Damian Lewis there. I know he kind of took somewhat of a step back last year, but I mean, to bring him back to right guard, I think there's an argument to be had there. But then again, it's like, damn, look at all these position changes. Right guard, then left guard, and then back to right guard. And he played a little bit of center last year. Let's just keep him in one spot. So left guard, I know he struggled down the stretch last year, but he's still young. Center, Jason Kelsey. I know Ryan Jensen is a very hot topic. He's a very popular commodity amongst, Seattle fans. I just think that if we're going to swing a trade for a guy like Laramie Tunsil, who has a cap hit north of $20 million, we won't be able to afford a Ryan Jensen. I know Jason Kelsey's 34 years old. I know he's old, but I don't know. To me, he's still one of the best centers in football. He finished as a first-team All-Pro, this past year, and he still got it. He's not the biggest of centers. He's not your mauler, but I don't know. I feel like what he would bring to the table as far as what he does on the field and off the field, I think that would help tremendously. At right guard, Gabe Jackson. I don't know if he's going to come back at $9 million just because I think that's a little exorbitant. He wasn't terrible by any means last year, but I think $9 million is a little too much, especially when there's so many other holes that we'd have to fill on the roster. And then, like I was talking about, at right tackle, Dwayne Brown, just because I couldn't really think of a replacement at right tackle. I don't think Stone Forsythe is ready. I don't think Jamarco Jones is ready to step into a full-time role. Dwayne Brown, I know he wants to come back, but I just don't know if he can be the guy at left tackle anymore. But if he doesn't mind that position change, then so be it. But if not, then obviously I'm going to have to find a new starter there. But speaking of offensive linemen, actually, no. That's not what. Actually, okay, no. While I have you guys for another 10, 15 minutes, we're actually going to touch on a few other topics if that's cool with you guys. I know I told you guys we were only going to touch on these two. Okay.
You actually gave me like 6. I actually didn't even know that this was one of the topics. I totally ran that off the top of my head.
Bro, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
Okay, the only other topic you told me about was the franchise tag candidates.
I didn't even get that.
Oh man. Okay. Hey, clearly preparation.
Pioneering. You are a pioneer, Calvin. It's easy.
Okay, you know what though, y'all? I'm not gonna keep him waiting any longer. Before we actually move on to the next topic, I do want to introduce a very special guest. If you guys were tuned in to the Bolts yesterday on @Squabble Says his channel, we had a Packer fan. I know he's a Green Bay Packers fan, but let's be nice, y'all. Let's show him some love. But I actually have a little bit of history with Emmett. He currently works or is classmates with Squabo at Washington State University. I think they said they're in 4 classes together, and so Squabo definitely had enough of his Emmett fill. But please, you guys,
please, you can't get enough of this guy. Come on.
Look, hey, he's the coolest Packer fan. One of the coolest Packer fans. I know a few cool Packer fans out there. And I used to work with him back when I was a sports editor at Highline College. He's a brilliant sports mind. He used to cover women's basketball for us, women's soccer, Green Bay Packers fan, NBA guy, all around sports guy. Please welcome Emmett Savoris.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Steezy, Squabo, long time no see.
And then Dylan, I don't know if you guys have met yet, but Dylan, this is Emmett, and then Emmett, this is Dylan.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm excited to get on here, talk some Hawks.
All right, y'all. Well, just because I did tell Squabo about this question, that's we'll touch on it right now. The Seahawks have only used the franchise tag twice in the John Schneider and the Pete Carroll era. Once, the first time back in 2010 for kicker Orlando Mare, and then the second time back in 2019 for Frank Clark, who they subsequently traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. With all the free agents that we have, with the cap space that we have, with all the holes that we have on the roster, do you guys foresee or envision a scenario in which Seattle uses the franchise tag for the 3rd time in the Pete Carroll and John Schneider era? And then Squabo, we'll start with you.
Sweet. Real quick, Stacey, I hope you don't mind. I just want to say about Emmett, because Dylan, I know you weren't there yesterday. Just so Emmett, I have 4 classes a semester. He has 5. He's in every one of my classes. So I see this fool all day long. I met him semesters back at Washington State. And just meeting this guy, every time I see him, every time I speak to him, every time I see something he creates, I get more and more impressed. He is such a great reporter. He's going to be phenomenal on TV one day. He's phenomenal today, but he's going to get a phenomenal job one day. And he has such a bright future. So Dylan, I really think this is, and Emmett, just so you know, Dylan is the dude that's been doing the show with Steezy and I ever since the beginning. Like, he's actually been there longer than Steezy. Yeah. So you are
day one.
Both two since day one. So you are both 2 very influential people in my life. I love both of you dearly. So I do think this is such a cool introduction, and I'm excited to have you all on the same show. So thank you, Steezy, for this opportunity. Okay.
Oh, thank you guys.
So about the franchise tag situation, Stacey, you gave me some names specifically that you wanted to discuss. And I love the names that you brought to the table. And I do think we have some franchise tag candidates. Okay, so let's dive into it. So the first player, Quandre Diggs. Okay. I put numbers, in my notes, what is the potential price if we give him the franchise tag, and I put my target number if we don't do the franchise tag. Quandre Diggs, easily the franchise tag is the best deal for him. I do not want to see him get paid more than that. If we can avoid it, like, that is my target number, $13.5 million for him. Are you kidding me? He leads our team in turnovers. He led it in 2 years in a row in turnovers. Quandre Diggs is spectacular on our defense. He is a leader, and he justifies the terrible trade for Jamal Adams by being a single coverage safety that can hold it down behind Jamal Adams' lack of coverage defensively. So he holds our defense together. He is the most important person that we have to bring back this offseason, in my opinion. And $13.5 million, save that cheddar. Hell yeah, I'm making that deal. I love that idea. DJ Reid. Or do you want to have reactions to that, or do you want me to go on?
No, my bad, bro. I'm playing with buttons over here. Now go ahead.
Okay. DJ Reid. Stacey, you and I made a bet with Daniel Dovin that that we both say DJ Reid's going to get paid $10 million or more this offseason, right? Dovin said underneath, the potential franchise tag would put him at $17 million per year. So I don't think that's a great deal. No. My target is somewhere 12 to 13 million. That puts him right behind a Marcus Peters in terms of his salary. Save that money. Do not franchise tag DJ Reid. 2 interceptions is not worth it. Okay.
Oh my.
Moving down the list, I got 2 more, right? Rashad Penny, one of the hottest names in sports in the latter half of the season, won me a fantasy football championship, won countless other people fantasy football championships. His franchise tag would be right at $9.5 million per year. Now, you know the market's been set by Christian McCaffrey making $16 million. So he's making 2/3 of McCaffrey. That is quite a lot of money. He hasn't been able to stay healthy before the latter half of last season. He's an unreliable asset. And because of that, it's okay if we do that, but only if it works out and we are successful all year with having him on the field and producing the way he did in the second half of last season. I don't want to take that risk. And so I'm leaning more towards, and Stacey, you've talked about this a lot, so I got to give you some credit here, an incentive-laden deal. And I want it to be a low base, right around $6 million. That puts him in the same ballpark as other running backs that at times can share a backfield with Austin Eckler and Kareem Hunt. So we put him right in that ballpark where he is a weapon for our backfield, but he doesn't strangle us in our cap situation. It's probably the most debatable if we should do the franchise tag with this player on this list. He's the most debatable to me. But I say a $6 million base deal, incentive laden. So if he goes off, he gets money. And I think that's the way to go with him. The last player on the list, Gerald Everett. Now, he was not as impressive to me as any other player on this list. As a matter of fact, he almost lost us that home game versus the 49ers by himself with all those turnovers, give it to himself, 2 fumbles, one of them inside the 5-yard line. And don't forget that triple pass where he touches it 3 times and gives it up to the defender in the end zone for another turnover. That's 2 turnovers in the red zone just in that game, and also gave the 49ers the ball in Seahawks territory. So he was trying to lose us that game. He played better at times late. He played okay against the Rams. $11 million would be the franchise tag for him, and that is double what I'm willing to pay for him. I say $5 million again. This is a Blake Jarwin type tight end in terms of where I'm willing to pay him. That's the price comparison. He nearly lost us multiple games. I'm not giving him the franchise tag.
You're muted,
Steve,
sir.
You're muted, buddy.
You're muted. That's awkward.
And I am muted. So apologies, y'all. I was just gonna say, are you not a believer in his pedigree? Or I do know that the offense did kind of struggle in Shane Waldron's first year at offensive coordinator, but he is a holdover from that Rams offensive system. Even if you weren't willing to give him the franchise tag, are you willing to at least give him an extension?
Steve, how much money did he get paid last year?
$6 to $7 million.
He did not earn a promotion to me. I'm not like last year. He almost cost me multiple games. I don't trust that. He was dropping passes. He was fumbling the ball. If you want to stay, this is a prove it type deal for him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no doubt. Dylan, agree or disagree?
I'm with Squabo on, especially. I'm actually with him on every single one of those takes. Quandre is definitely by far the best deal. 13.5 for Quandre Diggs, who I think most of us can agree over here. But I mean, Quandre has been one of the best safeties in all of football. I know that's not a popular opinion. I know when you see lists of top safeties, Quandre's name isn't really up there with them. I wholeheartedly believe he is one of the best safeties in this league. So to get him for $13.5 million, I know it was a bad injury that he's coming off of. I still think that's a great deal. DJ Reid, I do want to keep DJ Reid. Mm-hmm. Not for $17.3 million. That's a little much for me. I think he's been great. I think he deserves to get paid exactly where Squabo was saying, the 12 to 13, 14 kind of range, but 17.3 is a lot of money to give a corner that, has been fairly good, but not a top tier type cornerback. What was Rashad Penny? I'm with you guys. This has got to be an incentive-laced deal. You got to do a base of $4 to $6 million, and then if he can stay healthy at the end of the year, we do pay him. We give him a longer contract, and we give him the money he deserves. But he's got to show that he can stay healthy for an entire season and that he can take most of the workload for an entire season. But Gerald Everett is one of the last people I would give the franchise tag to. $10.8 million for a tight end of Gerald Everett's caliber. And this is no disrespect to Gerald Everett. I like Gerald Everett. I hope he comes back for another year. But for the $5 to $6 million range, not double-digit million range, because I feel like that's pretty reserved for top-tier tight ends, and Gerald Everett did not play like a top-tier tight end this last year.
No, and you're not wrong. Emmett, out of all those guys that are free agents, do you think it's feasible that Seattle uses the franchise tag, or do you think that they just either re-sign these guys or let them go?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I could not agree more with every point that was made. I think especially with, you look at a guy like Quandre Diggs, he is coming off of an injury, so you're going to have some sort of concern about that. Although it is a broken leg in general, you're not going to see, it's not like an ACL or a hamstring injury where you're going to see a bunch of re-injuries to that. But having a 1 year sort of prove it deal, especially at a cheap thing like $13.5 million, I think it's something you absolutely have to do. The Rashad Penny point I agreed with as well. You can't pay him that large figure for the franchise tag.
Okay, no doubt. I think for me, I'd hate to use it on a Quandre Diggs just because he's earned himself an extension. You know, as you guys might or might not recall, it was last offseason in which he tried to hammer out an extension with the Seattle Seahawks, but Seattle was a little bit more fixated on giving Jamal a record-setting extension. And so that was totally understandable. And I understand he is coming off a broken leg, but to me, I would franchise tag him not to actually, not with the intent of having him play under the franchise tag, but only to extend the deadline in which we can come to terms on a deal. I feel like once we franchise tag him, that gives us up until, June or July? I'm not exactly sure when the exact date is. Emmett,
I believe it's July 1st. July
1st. Okay, so if we were to franchise tag him, because we have until the 8th of March to franchise tag him. And so I don't think we need all that time, but I definitely don't think that more time, could hurt, just because right now it's like, how much should we pay him? Are we supposed to pay him based off what he's done for us in the past? Are we supposed to pay him for what we're supposed to get out of the future? I don't know. I know he's not going to be the most happy with it, but I do know that we will work with him, to hammer out an extension just because he's deserved it. And there are reports that he's set to come back in time for training camp. And so I don't know if that's going to affect his play. But Squab, like you so beautifully said, he's the perfect complement to Jamal Adams at safety. I know we'll touch on this a little bit later. I don't know if Dylan and Squab are going to be here, but Clint Hurt wants to be more aggressive. He wants to, run more of a 3-4 type scheme, and that'll play perfectly to Jamal's strengths. He's more of a downhill type of guy. And so if that's going to be the case, we are going to need a safety back there to kind of patrol and do his thing. Quandre Diggs, that's the guy. But we'll actually touch on one more topic before Dylan and Squabo goes. And so I'm kind of going through the list here. Let's talk about Russell Wilson. I know it's been talked about ad nauseum. I know the media, I know a whole bunch of fans of teams are bringing up potential trade destinations, potential trade scenarios. Russ himself, there was a little bit of a, I don't know if you'd call it a controversy, but a lot of people were kind of zeroing in on the fact that he changed his profile picture and kind of wiped his social medias clean of all things Seattle Seahawks related. Me personally, I thought it was a non-story, but the media, they made it a story. And so because it is, let's react. Squabo, I see you thinking very deeply there. What's your take on the whole Russell Wilson saga, and where do you stand as it pertains to his future in Seattle? Is he here for another year? Is he gone next offseason? What's going on?
God, I hate this question. I'm sorry. People just keep talking about Russell Wilson. We need Russell Wilson here.
Yes.
Russell Wilson was not a top 5 quarterback last year, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean he's not a top 5 heading into this year. I think that he easily could earn his way back into the top 5 by the end of the season. I think it's very probable because he's highly motivated, and we're obviously going to make some moves this offseason because our division rival just won the Super Bowl. Give us a chance to respond. Give us a chance to retaliate. Give us a chance to bring in more troops. Very ironic, that metaphor. But seriously, I think Russell Wilson, a reloaded roster, he hasn't got injured until this year. What makes you think he's going to get injured again? Probability says he's going to stay healthy. I obviously am very much hoping that he stays healthy. I think he's going to have a bounce back season. I think the fact that we're running it back with Pete and Russell Wilson, something has to change, and I think we're going to find that within our roster.
Love it. Emmett, do you have anything different to add?
Not too much different. As much as I would like for it to be a huge story and the kind of like the downfall of the Seahawks, I don't think it's going to be. I think it's a gigantic non-story, although this is seemingly 2 off seasons in a row where we're seeing stuff from Russell Wilson about either wanting a move, or I think the report earlier this off season was that he wanted to kind of test the waters and just see what was out there. But I do think that it's going to wind up being a non-story, especially if the Seahawks want to remain successful, because I don't think they have that guy on the roster and they don't have a first-round pick this year to be able and go make a change at the quarterback position.
Okay, and before we go to Dylan, I know Squab and Emmett, we talked about this yesterday, and so for those of you guys that tuned in yesterday, you already know his answer, but I just kind of want Emmett's answer in front of this audience. Emmett, between Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, who's more likely to start 2022 as the quarterback for their respective teams?
I don't remember what my answer was. It was Russell Wilson. It was Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
I do believe that both of them will remain in place. But I do think that Rodgers' contract situation means that he's going to have to get a new contract from somebody, whether that's going to be an extension with Green Bay or a trade and then an extension with another team. But I do think that Russell Wilson, he is going to remain a Seahawk, at least for this year. Maybe if something doesn't change next year on a coaching front, if the team's not doing too well. But as of right now, Russell Wilson will be the quarterback for the Seahawks for the 2022 season.
Okay, and then one more follow-up question before we move on to Dylan. I know this is kind of wild, but let's say all hell breaks loose. Let's say Seattle offers Russell Wilson to the Green Bay Packers for Aaron Rodgers and I don't know, assets and whatnot, salary filler, first round picks, whatever they need to do to get the deal done. But I mean, is that a lateral move for the Packers?
That's like trading Putin for Biden. That's
oh my God.
What? Oh my gosh. Why are you bringing up so many references to war right now?
Oh my Lord.
How do we avoid it? It's happening. I don't know which trade is more likely though. Seriously.
I'm not the one who broke that either. Like I said, sometimes the media, they're manufacturing all these crazy storylines, headlines, and whatnot. So I'm just kind of curious, what's your reaction? Because when I first heard that, I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" Do we even have to entertain that? But because so many people are, we are for just a little bit. Emmett, what say you?
I think it's a step backwards for both franchises, which I do think is a little bit of a weird thing to say, because the Seahawks, I don't believe, especially if they're giving up assets to get Rodgers, which I would believe that they would have to do, I don't think they get better as a football team. Oh, I believe so. And I think and I don't think Green Bay gets very much better as a football team for the 2022 season either. I think you're going to have a quarterback who's going to be learning a new system with a new head coach, brand new personnel. And again, I think that goes with Rodgers in Seattle as well.
You don't think it'd be much of an upgrade because Russell Wilson, I know he's not phenomenal in the postseason, but he's been a lot better in the postseason than Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, he hasn't beaten a team that scored a touchdown against him since 2014 in the playoffs, but phenomenal.
Wow. Well, we can go back and forth forever. I know my guys over here, they got to go soon, but before they go, Dylan, how feasible? Not feasible. What's your take on the whole Russell Wilson scenario, drama, whatever you want to call it, and what do you think he stands as far as it pertains to his future? Is he going to be here for the foreseeable future? Is he going to retire in Seattle? What say you?
I'm with Squabbo. I'm just so tired of talking about this. I mean, like I said earlier with Bobby, it seems like we're going to run it back. It seems like we believe we have a good enough team to make a deep playoff run. That being said, why would we give up Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson is about 90% of why we are successful as a football team. We got our first glimpse of what it's like when we don't have Russell Wilson on the football field. It wasn't pretty. We beat Jacksonville. That was the only team we beat without Russell Wilson. And it wouldn't make any sense to trade Russell Wilson if you're going to keep Pete, if you're going to keep Bobby, if you're going to keep all these core pieces. Now, if we fired fired Pete Carroll, we kind of went overload. I wouldn't be too shocked if we traded Russell Wilson also and just completely restarted the franchise. But with the way things are going, there's no reason to trade Russell Wilson right now because we are trying to be successful right now. And without Russell Wilson, we probably aren't going to be successful. Like Emmett said, we don't even have a first-round pick this year. And the quarterback class this year is nothing to be very excited about. That's no disrespect to them. But it compared it to last year, I mean, when we had 5 first-round quarterbacks go, we don't have that this year. We have very much different from that this year. So I don't see any reason for us to trade Russell Wilson at this point.
Okay. Hey, look, I know you guys have to go. So Dylan, Squabbo, man, thank you guys so much for hopping on. I know it was kind of on short notice. And to the viewers out there, we're not ending the show yet. So, just a second. I would just, saying farewell, saying goodbye. If you guys have any last words, please go ahead. And one more thing. Hey, please subscribe. Monday Night Fight Talk. Dylan Brewski's new channel on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. And I'm going to let him do his thing. Dylan, go ahead.
All right, I appreciate you, Steezy. Like Steezy said, please go subscribe to my new channel. It is called Monday Night Fight Talk. I am on Instagram, also at Monday Night Fight Talk, and then Twitter. Like I said earlier, it said it was too long, so I had to shorten it a little bit. It's MN Fight Talk on Twitter. So please go follow me on both of those, and please subscribe to my channel. Tune in Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That will be every week. That will be the time I will be dropping my new weekly episode. So again, I appreciate both you, Steezy, and you, Squabbo. You guys have been basically 100% the reason that I'm even going to do this. You have motivated me every single week to the point where I was like, man, these guys really need to stop it. But hey, I'm glad you guys didn't. I'm glad you pushed me. And I'm glad we've got to this point. And I'm very excited to see where this takes me.
Squabbo, any last words?
That was sweet, man. I'm just so happy for Dylan. Like,
Right.
Steezy, I knew you were going to start one eventually. I remember badgering you, but I knew you'd come around eventually. I didn't know that about Dylan. I was unsure. Like, seriously. I didn't believe it was actually going to happen for a very long time, but the whole time Steezy and I were just like, you know what? We know he should do it, and we know he'd be great at it, and we know that once he did it, he would feel so accomplished. And you did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was so happy for you, bro. I'm so happy for
Appreciate
you. MN Fight Night on Twitter. Everywhere else, it's Monday Night Fight Night. Like, I love it. You clever genius. Fight Talk. I'm sorry. It's still new. It's first show hasn't happened yet.
It's
I'm
all
getting
good.
it in there.
You're good.
Fight Talk. But go check it out. That's what I gotta say.
Man, thank you guys so much. At Squabo Says on YouTube and all other social media platforms, at Monday Night Fight Talk. Yeah, at Monday Night Fight Talk on all platforms as well. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Please, please, please. This is the boat right here. 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, 3 of 3. We got all 3 of us on here every single Friday on Squabo's channel. The Bolts, keeping you up to date with the latest in the sports world. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss any updates. But again, Dylan and Squabo, thank you guys so much for spending some time with us. Emmett, we still got a whole bunch we want to talk about. So to the audience out there, don't leave just yet, but please say goodbye to Dylan and Squabo, and until next time again, my brothers.
Hey, man, pleasure to meet you, Emmett. See you, Steezy. Good luck on the rest of your show, and I can't wait to go on future shows. Congratulations on the live show.
Bro, thank you so much. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love you.
All right,
Be
y'all.
safe.
All right, Emmett. Like I said, bro, we
What's
still have
going on?
so much to talk about. For those of you guys, so much. For those of you guys that are still tuned in, please bear with me. I just want to touch on a few super chats and a few chats real quick. I don't want you guys to think that I'm ignoring any of the audience, and so there's gonna be a lot to run through. So I'll bring up a couple. Seahawks Eddie, what's going on, my man? How are you doing? Lori, I hope you're still doing wonderful. And then my guy Brandon, I forgot to say what's up, but yo, Brandon, if you're still tuned in, bro, thank you so much for tuning in. I can't wait to have you on the show one of these days. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. And there were a couple of super chats that I wanted to kind of touch on as well. My brother, Best Sports Analyst, 499 super chat. Thank you so much. Nothing but love, my brother. Jake Hearn. When we're talking about the offensive line earlier, I forgot to bring up Jake Kerhan. Maybe I have a revised answer once we come around to that. Donnie Pearson, how are you doing? I hope you are having a wonderful evening. Thank you for spending your Saturday night with us. And then Nick, as always, thank you for being a mod. Your life. And then one more time before we continue, Monday Night Fight Talk, please subscribe to Uncle Brewski's new YouTube channel. Follow him on Instagram, follow him on Twitter, all that good stuff. And maybe you guys could start pestering Emmett to make a YouTube channel. I mean, it worked for me. It worked for Dylan. Who knows? Maybe Emmett's next in line. So what do you say about that, Emmett?
Hey, who knows? Maybe I already have something in the works. Oh,
light bulb. Okay. All right. Well, just because, I feel bad I didn't include you in the conversation, we're actually going to circle back real quick to Bobby Wagner, just because that is the title of the show. Look, Seattle has a lot of cap space. Like I said, $36+ million, but there are a lot of holes. There are a lot of needs that Seattle has to address. And they also have a lot of their own free agents that they had to re-sign. And so you bring back all those guys, you don't have a lot of cap space to work with. And so if they want to bring outside talent in, they're still going to have to make moves as it pertains to other guys' contracts. Bobby Wagner is set to carry the highest cap hit amongst all inside linebackers at $20.35 million. What are you doing with Bobby Wagner if you're John Schneider? Are you extending him? Are you coming to him for a restructure? Are you trading him? Or are you just outright cutting him?
I think you look at his contract situation, and I think it's very similar to Aaron Rodgers in terms of he can't play on that contract. That is a massive cap hit, especially if you look at the fact that if you are able to cut him pre-June 1st, you're going to save yourself about $16.5 million against the cap. And I believe it was Dylan who said earlier he is declining, or he has been declining at least. His last year was by far one of his worst years. He has been getting older. He's going to be 32, but he gave up almost 700 yards in coverage last year. He did only give up 1 touchdown, but he had his his second most missed tackles of his career with 14. He had his lowest tackles for loss. He only had 3 all season. He's not necessarily a guy who's always going to be blitzing, but he only had, I believe it was 3 quarterback hits all season long on 50 blitz attempts. He just hasn't, at least last year, he wasn't the same guy. That being said, I wouldn't give up on Bobby Wagner. He's still obviously an elite linebacker in this league, but I don't think he can play on that contract. And again, freeing up $16 million in cap space is no joke. And I know we're going to get into it in a little bit just on some free agent people to bring in. I think that if you are going to wind up getting rid of Bobby Wagner, this is a pretty good free agent talent pool in terms of inside linebacker talent.
Wow, I couldn't even fathom the possibility of Bobby Wagner leaving this franchise. But then again, we couldn't fathom Richard Sherman playing for the Niners. We couldn't fathom Earl Thomas playing for a different team. We couldn't fathom Cam Chancellor having ended his career so abruptly. We couldn't fathom all these other guys not having retired with the Seattle Seahawks. And so I totally understand what you're saying. But at the end of the day, the NFL is a business and Bobby Wagner is his own agent. And so because that's such a uncommon thing in the National Football League. We don't know how he's going to approach negotiations. We don't know how he's going to come to the table. We don't know what he wants. He doesn't have an agent out there kind of making statements and saying stuff for him. And so I really hope we don't end up having to cut him, just because I don't know if you heard me earlier today on the show, but I talked about how we don't really have a leader in the linebacker room. On the defensive line, we have our new defensive coordinator, right? And Clint Hurt. He's a defensive line type of guy. For the secondary, for the DBs, for the safeties, Pete Carroll's always been known as a secondary sort of guy. Sean Desai coming over from the Chicago Bears. Carl Scott, Minnesota Vikings passing game coordinator or defensive backs coordinator, something along those lines. We have guys on every level of the defense, kind of mentoring and stewarding the ship. I think Bobby Wagner, I think the likeliest thing, or I would hope it's the likeliest thing that happens this offseason, is we extend him, add a couple years to his contract. So you spread out that $20.35 million cap hit throughout the course of 2 to 3 years. You add maybe a void year or two, and you ensure that he retires in Seattle, just because I feel like Seattle has treated so many of its stars wrong in the past. We don't want that to happen with Bobby Wagner. And Emmett, you kind of touched on the next topic, but speaking of free agents, are there what outside free agents do you have in mind for Seattle? Like I said, 36 plus million in spending power with the potential to make a lot more. Who are some guys that you think Seattle should target?
I mean, I think you guys touched on it earlier in the show. One of the biggest needs has always been offensive line ever since Max Unger's departure for I believe it was in the Jimmy Graham trade a while ago now. But I think you look at a guy like a Teron Armstead or a Cam Robinson, bringing one of them in at left tackle. I think the Teron Armstead one is going to be, I think he's probably going to demand a good amount of money. And I don't think he's going to wind up staying with the Saints just because of all the cap trouble that they're in, especially. And it seems like they're going to wind up being in a sort of like sell mode. But I do think you look at a guy like at center, especially maybe a Matt Paradis or I'll keep my one for the starting offensive line a little bit. I'll keep that one secret. But I think bringing in a Ryan Jensen, which you guys talked on, is also going to be one that could be very, very impactful. And then here's a couple, I think, here's a pair of guys I think you could bring in that's really going to help this defense. Just to touch on the other side of the ball, I think you could bring in a guy like a Melvin Ingram as an edge rusher, especially if you're switching to that 3-4 system, or if you're going to be running a little bit more of a multiple defense. I think bringing in a veteran pass rusher is going to help, and it's going to be able to, you're going to almost guarantee that Darrell Taylor is going to be in one-on-one blocking on the outside. I think another guy in the middle is somebody like a Linval Joseph. I know I've been seeing Akeem Hicks being thrown out there, but he has had some injury issues over the past couple of years. So I don't know how much money I'd really be willing to pay somebody that, especially in like a Chris Carson situation, who's not going to be on the field as much as he should be getting paid to. So Linval Joseph is another one. And then when I was talking about Bobby Wagner earlier, there was two different people that I had in mind. I am a little biased because I did watch them all the time. My dad is a Dallas Cowboy fan. Anthony Hitchens, who just got released by the Chiefs, I think he's a very interesting inside linebacker to bring in. He has a ton of experience. I believe he's been starting the past couple of years with the Chiefs. He started with the Cowboys a while. Speaking of the Cowboys, the other one, this one I would only take on a very, very cheap deal. Would be Leighton Vander Esch. He's a very athletic linebacker. He's only been in the league about 4 years, but I think if you brought him in and he was in a situation where he's not going to be your number one, like your linebacker, like a Bobby Wagner, if you kind of flip Jordyn Brooks into Bobby Wagner's role and you put Vander Esch in a place to succeed, I think that could be a very cheap and reliable, well, I guess cheap option, maybe not so reliable, which is why you'll be able to get him so cheap, option to replace Bobby Wagner and help shore up that defense for years to come.
Emmett, I feel like for a non-Seahawks fan, you bring a whole lot of insight to the table. You bring a whole lot of knowledge. You bring a whole lot of game. And you know what you're saying. I've come across a whole lot of Seahawks fans, and I'm not holding this against them, but I'm just saying every time I ask about free agents, I'm always hearing the same names. I'm always hearing the guys that are at the top of the market, the guys that are expected to get some of the biggest money on the market. But no, in Seattle, they're not big free agency players. I hope that changes this offseason. But if their tendencies in free agency, they're not really the type to go out and splash. They're more of the type to go out to Walmart and shop in the clearance section per se. And so for you to bring up some of those guys that you brought up, Anthony Hitchens, I feel like he'd be a wonderful addition. He'd bring some much needed, maybe not athleticism, but I think he'd bring much needed leadership. He's a veteran. He's been in the game for a while. And that is only if we move off of Bobby Wagner. Now, if we don't, I think Seattle is set at linebacker. But to have a contingency plan, just in case, that can't hurt anybody. Linval Joseph, I've long been a fan of his game. I mean, he's so great at stuffing the run. He is getting a little up there in age, but we need some guys on the defensive interior. So I wouldn't mind that at all. And I know I've kind of had this up for a while now, but for me, just real quick, some of the guys that I feel like Seattle should target in free agency: Jason Kelsey, Ryan Jensen. I don't care which of the two it is, honestly. I really feel like it would just be such an upgrade at center. Ethan Posick, yeah, he's displayed some potential, but I don't see him being a reliable starter for Seattle moving forward. And I truly believe that with the elite center like a Jason Kelsey or a Ryan Jensen, they're not going to be super expensive. I mean, you don't see centers getting north of 15 million, north of 14 million. I think Corey Lindsey last year, what was it, a 5-year, $60 million deal, and he ended up being an all-pro. And so who knows, maybe we get the same thing out of a Ryan Jensen. I don't see him returning to Tampa Bay just because that team, Tom Brady's retired. Whether or not he comes back, you're going to see a lot of guys leaving because Tom Brady's not there anymore. Defensive end Calais Campbell, like we touched on, Seattle will be moving to more of a 3-4 based scheme on defense. And Calais Campbell, I know he's another guy that's kind of getting up there in age. What is it, 34, 35 years old? And so he's an old man, especially when you look at it from a football standpoint, but he's still, I feel like, great at what he does. He does not have to come in and be a full-time player. He doesn't have to come in and play a full allotment of snaps. I feel like as a rotational pass rusher, as a guy that you can kind of have, on the first couple of downs, he's a run stuffer still, even at this stage in his career. He'd bring much needed, veteran leadership to the locker room. I think he'd be a great addition. Stefan Gilmore, last but not least, among other guys. Richard Sherman was on record saying that Stefan Gilmore might sign with the Seattle Seahawks or San Francisco 49ers. Now, I don't know if he knows something that we don't, but maybe he's friends with Gilmore and he has a little bit of inside knowledge. I hope he signs with San Fran and not Seattle, but I am pretty high on our cornerback room. Trent Brown, who I'm very, very high on. DJ Reid, like you might already know. And then Sidney Jones. I thought he performed well down the stretch. And so even if we weren't able to sign any cornerbacks down the stretch or in free agency, I think we're set. Maybe we draft a guy in the draft. We'll see where that goes. But speaking of free agents, outside free agents, Seattle, like I also talked about earlier, bro, we have a plethora of free agents. I don't think you were a part of the conversation, and so I'm not going to dive into it. But who are some free agents that you think Seattle absolutely has to retain? I'll have my list down here just in case. But
I mean, I think you nailed it. The only one I have different, I said instead of Gerald Everett, I have Sidney Jones in there. I think that you're going to have to keep either DJ Reid or Sidney Jones. You have to keep at least one. Obviously, you'd rather keep DJ Reid, I think, than Sidney Jones because Sidney Jones was a little bit more of a he came in and he did well for what he was getting paid to do. But I think like locking up somebody like a DJ Reid, give him like a 3 or 4 year deal if you can. Get him at a cheaper price point. Obviously, you don't want to do anything like give him what the franchise tag is. I believe it was $17 million, somewhere in that range. I don't think you can pay like kind of a cornerback to that sort of money, or a perceived cornerback to that sort of money. But again, I had Quandre Diggs he's number one. He's priority numero uno. You can't really do anything in that secondary if you don't have Quandre Diggs. I think we saw the immediate impact he had when he got traded from Detroit. I believe it was in the middle of the year 2019 was the year he came over. He came over and he had an immediate impact on that defense. And I think you see when he's on the field, they're better. So I think starting off with him, you're going to have to franchise tag him, not from a perspective of, that's what he's worth. I think it's just, you can't let him hit the free agent market. You can't, because he's going to be getting a ridiculous amount of money. I believe it was Dylan up there who was saying he's one of the top safeties in league, and I 100% agree. I think that he is extremely underrated. He's not brought up in that sort of thing just because of the amount of big plays that Seattle does give up, but that's because of Jamal Adams and not Quandre Diggs. And honestly, it should give Quandre Diggs a little bit more just for having to kind of cover up for his the amount of mistakes in coverage that Jamal Adams does make. Rashad Penny, I think, is a very interesting one. I think that if you're going to get second half of the season, Rashad Penny, when he was going on an absolute tear, I know I was getting smacked around in fantasy because of Rashad Penny. But if you can get second half of the season, Rashad Penny, I think that you can lock him up on again, I still would try to do an incentive-based deal where you're not paying him a ridiculous amount of money to miss games. But I think he's got to be a key free agent, especially with what you saw from him down the stretch, and especially in this Shane Waldron / like Sean McVay sort of system, which is based around the run. Even if you can kind of get pass happy at times, it all is working off of that play action and that in the run game. But again, I think that DJ Reid, Sidney Jones, you have to get one of them. Quandre Diggs, of course, I think you're probably going to franchise tag him. And I think Seattle will franchise tag him, and it wouldn't shock me if they were able to come to an agreement on an extension. But I think that Seattle also wouldn't have a problem of not doing that and using it as kind of we got him very cheap for this 1 year. But again, if Quandre Diggs bets on himself, plays like a top 5 safety in football, next thing you know, they're going to be paying him Buda Baker money. So,
bro. So with Quandre Diggs, I'm curious. Do you think his injury affects his market value at all? Like, do you think he's going to lose out on money? Or I know there's reports that he should be good to go come training camp. Do you think that's going to affect his money at all?
I don't think it should, but I think it will. I think in a truly fair sort of situation, I think it would be an absolutely no-brainer that I believe he's going to be okay. But again, it's a business, as you guys said earlier, and I think teams are going to use that to their advantage. Like, well, we don't know, but I believe they do know what they're going to get, and they're going to be whoever winds up getting him. Most likely, Seattle is going to be getting themselves at worst a top 10 safety in the league.
Oh, no doubt. One more thing I want to touch on before we move on to the next topic, but DJ Reid, real quick, let me just bring up that. Look, a couple of weeks ago, I dropped an episode on this channel talking about the best cornerback in the NFL that you have never heard of. And that's right. I'm talking about DJ Reid. I know and I understand he's only 5'9". And just in case, FYI, I'm 5'9". And so just to kind of give you guys an idea, he's not your ideal outside starting cornerback. But when we look at some of his performance from last year relative to some of the guys that finished as all pros, AJ Terrell was a second team all pro. JC Jackson, second team all pro. Jalen Ramsey and Trevon Diggs were both first team all pros. Let me give you some numbers real quick. So DJ Reid allowed a lesser completion percentage of passes in his direction than Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, according to Pro Football Reference, allowed a completion percentage of 59%. DJ Reid, I think it was under 50%. And as far as interceptions go, AJ Terrell has 3 in the last 2 years. DJ Reid in the last 2 years also has 3. As far as yards allowed throughout the course of the year, Trevon Diggs allowed almost 1,000. I thought it was well over 900. DJ Reid only allowed over 500. And then as for JC Jackson, he is, a playmaker. He's a turnover machine. But when it comes to stopping the run or, adding a little bit of physicality to his game, that's not really a part of his game. DJ Reid is one of the best run stuffing cornerbacks in all the National Football League. Pro Football Focus ranked him not only as a top 10 cornerback overall, but they ranked him as a top 5 cornerback against the run with a grade of 85.8. That's right under a Jalen Ramsey at 86.8. And again, just to reiterate, I'm not saying that DJ Reid is better than any of these guys. Obviously, if you put a little bit of context to some of DJ Reid's stats, he is a number 2 corner, like you said, Emmett. And so some of those numbers might be skewed, but I think he's a lot closer to being in that conversation for being one of the guys that flies under the radar, for being one of those guys that are supremely underrated. And so because of that, I do believe that he's going to get a deal in excess of $10+ million. And a lot of people are going to be caught off guard, but the truth is the truth and film is film. So, I really do think that DJ Reid is going to be a part of Seattle's future. He is only 25 and he plays a premium position. And real quick, I know to the audience, I touched on this, but I just want to get Emmett's answer. Emmett, we have 3 guys on the offensive line that are free agents. And so if you had to play John Schneider's role and rebuild this offensive line, what's your ideal starting 5?
I think I have a very similar answer for most of it. I think we both have the same guards, Damian Lewis starting at left guard and then Gabe Jackson at right. We decided to go a couple different routes in terms of you're going to have different starting tackles and a center for the Seahawks. If I were building the roster, I think you're going to look Cam Robinson. Squabo touched on it earlier. He is a dude. You're going to have him starting at left tackle. Again, Damian Lewis, you're going to have him as your left guard. He's been improving every year. The center that I did not name earlier, I saw it in the comments, Ben Jones. He is a little bit older. He is 32, but I think he's coming from a run-heavy system. And again, I do think that you're looking at a Seahawks team that is going to want to run the ball. That's what Pete Carroll teams do. They run the ball. Again, you're coming from your offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. He's coming from a run-heavy system or a run-based system for the Los Angeles Rams. So bringing in a center like Ben Jones, I think, is going to be awesome. Here is where I went completely and totally different than you guys. And I saw one of these guys in the comments earlier. I think bringing in a guy like an older veteran, like I watched the Packers bring him in last year, Dennis Kelly. I don't think he's necessarily the best sort of guy, but I think he's a guy you can get on a very cheap deal and let Jake Curhan develop underneath him. I talked to some Seahawk friends and they told me that all they saw from him was very good stuff. He was improving throughout the year. He did give up 4 sacks on the year, but I think you look at that and I think he's going to improve. And I think he's probably going to wind up being one of the better Seahawks offensive linemen that has been developing in the system. I think that is going to be your starting offensive line for the Seahawks next year. Again, Cam Robinson, Damian Lewis, Ben Jones at center, Gabe Jackson, and then you're going to probably get a mix of Dennis Kelly and Jake Curhan at right tackle.
Hey, bro, that's actually crazy because Jake Curhan, I did a little bit of watching film, and Jake Curhan, he is a mauler, especially in the run game. I mean, my gosh, the amount of physicality, his presence at the point of attack. I definitely like what he brings to the future, or excuse me, what he brings to the table. And so I could definitely see him as a viable option at right tackle, especially when you consider the fact that he's being paid pennies on the dollar. What is it? He was undrafted last year, and so he's barely receiving $1 million in his contract. And so if Seattle does want to go the cheap route, and if they do want to continue to develop him and help him progress in pass protection and pass protection technique, man, I definitely think that could work. And so maybe we don't need to put Dwayne Brown at right tackle in my ideal starting 5. Jake Curhan, I do like what he brings to the table, and so for me to forget about him, that's my bad. But let's move on over to the defensive side of the football. Clint Hurtt, new defensive coordinator, was promoted from within. He's never had experience being a defensive coordinator, in the National Football League. And so we don't know exactly what he's going to bring to the table. But he is on record saying that the defense is going to be a lot more aggressive next year. And to me, that kind of implies that Seattle is going to blitz a lot more under Hurts. He also talked about how, the defense is going to feature more 3-4 looks next season, which means that some of the team's pass rushers will be responsible for dropping back in coverage from time to time. But as we saw what happened last year, Carlos Dunlap struggled dropping back in coverage. Benson Mayowa did the same thing. We even saw guys like Al Woods, Brian Monet, Poona Ford dropping back into coverage. And so what does this mean for guys like Carlos Dunlap? What does this mean for Benson Mayowa? And which guys should Seattle target to get more talent that fits into that 3-4 scheme?
I think you touched on some of the people earlier. I think that you're going to need to get yourself a real defensive tackle, maybe an upgrade over an Al Woods or a Poona Ford. Maybe you can get that in some sort of a person like Linval Joseph, like I touched on earlier. Calais Campbell, I believe, was a very good one. He was just, I do think that he's probably going to command a pretty big market. Calais Campbell will. But I think that what you touched on, the first sentence for this new defense, right, the first thing in my notes, aggressive. That's what I have. I said that they're going to be an aggressive defense, but I do think that does wind up coming with some risks. I think it's going to be big time boom or bust. I think you're going to wind up seeing a lot of big plays, but I don't think you're going to be seeing the same sort of Seahawks defense you've been watching for the past couple of years, where it's third down and 10, and you're only watching 4 people rush, or you're watching 3 people rush and you're dropping 8 into coverage. I think you're going to be watching a very aggressive defense. And they're going to be probably getting a lot of sacks, and hopefully hopefully for you guys, they're going to be very optimistic in terms of bringing in a bunch of turnovers. He did touch on, I think one of the things is getting the best out of Jamal Adams. And I think with that, you're going to have him wind up playing in the box more, almost like a hybrid linebacker. I think that this entire defense can kind of go the way Jamal Adams goes in a sense. I think that you saw towards the end of the year that they did improve when he wasn't on the field, but I don't think that was necessarily all because of him. I think that they just wound up kind of clicking towards the end of the season. But I think that you're going to see a very high effort defense. Again, you talked about they brought in Clint Hurtt. They're bringing in Sean Desai from the Bears, who I believe is a Fangio disciple. I think you're going to wind up seeing a very aggressive team who's going to be blitzing a lot, which is not what the Seahawks have been used to for the past couple of years.
All right. Real quick, just to address some of the people in the chat. We got my Unc here in the building. What's going on, Unc? Shout out from Atlanta. He said, Who's Seattle's quarterback in 2022? Not to be disrespectful, but I think we all know the answer to that question, my man, Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson is going anywhere, and I actually didn't get a chance to include some of my input, but let's just look at the state of the NFC. Outside of the LA Rams, outside of your reigning defending Super Bowl champions, are there any real threats in the NFC? Okay, let's say Aaron Rodgers goes back to Green Bay. Okay, we have the Packers, we have the Rams. But outside of those two teams, where are the threats in the NFC? Russell Wilson has talked time and time again about wanting to win in Seattle. And so if there's an opportunity, if there's a window for him to do that in Seattle, given all their flexibility, given, some of the draft picks that they do have, given some of the moves that they could potentially make, why force a trade to the AFC, or why force a trade to another team in the NFC when you have all this familiarity, when you have all this chemistry, when you have so many things going for you here in the city of Seattle? I mean, we talked about this yesterday, on the Bolt, but the AFC is a gauntlet. Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, Buffalo, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert and the Chargers, Joe Burrow and the Bengals, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, Derek Carr and the Raiders, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry and the Titans, and so on and so on and so on. And there's still a chance that maybe Aaron Rodgers goes over to the AFC. We don't know. Deshaun Watson, let's say he plays this year. What if he stays in the AFC? There is way too much of a mess in the AFC. And so, to answer your question one more time and emphatically, Russell Wilson will be the Seahawks quarterback in 2022. But going back to what we were saying about the whole defense being more aggressive, what do you think that means for Jamal Adams? Because like we talked about, he's more of a guy that should be playing closer to the line of scrimmage. He should be a guy that's playing exclusively downhill. He should be a guy that should be spending a lot more of his time, at the line rather than away from the line. And so do you foresee a scenario in which Jamal Adams, brings back memories of what he did in his first year in Seattle, 9.5 sacks in 12 games, or what do you see out of Jamal Adams moving forward?
I think especially with them moving to this 3-4 scheme, I think you're going to see a lot more of Jamal Adams playing sort of in the box. And I think you might even see a scenario where he's kind of playing that outside linebacker position like a 3-4 linebacker should, or a 3-4 outside linebacker should at least. I think you're going to be seeing that because I think although he is undersized and could be a problem or a liability against the run, I think that if you're rushing the passer and you're able to, if you're sending 4 or you're sending 5, you're going to have him in one-on-one, and I don't think that an offensive lineman's going to be able to match his speed. And unless he's getting chipped by a running back, I think he's going to have a pretty, relatively easy time probably getting to the quarterback. But I think for Jamal Adams, I think we should be looking at him having one of the better years of his career, and especially he will be improving from this last year in Seattle.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I think for me, I will touch on this sometime in the future, but I think we're in for a career year from Jamal Adams. I mean, he's yet to play a full season in Seattle, and I know we don't have too much reason to believe otherwise just because of how reckless he plays. And so that kind of leads to, more of an injury-prone type of situation, especially on his body. But I do believe that because we're moving to, or transitioning to more of a 3-4 type of scheme, we could see him on the field with 3 other linebackers, Bobby Wagner, Cody Barton, Jordyn Brooks. He could be the 4th linebacker in any of those packages. And so Clint Hurd was also on record talking about how they felt like they misused Jamal Adams last year. I know New York, when he was in New York, he definitely did play a lot more as far as deep coverage. But like we saw last year, that's just not his forte. I don't think he's nearly as bad as people are painting him out to be. But let's face it, he's not. I wouldn't give him an A. I wouldn't give him a B. Maybe I'd give him a C, if I'm being generous, if you catch me on a nice day. But given everything that we've talked about, Emmett, we've talked about Bobby Wagner, we've talked about outside free agents, we've talked about the whole Russell Wilson scenario, we've talked about free agents that we'd like to re-sign. Give me an early prediction for Seattle's record next season. Do they have a chance in a wide open NFC? And do you see them maybe winning the division? Do you see them as a wild card team? What are your expectations for Seattle moving forward?
I really do think that this year was it was an obvious down year for Seattle, and I don't necessarily think that they're going to be that bad in this season coming up. But I don't know if you're necessarily looking at a massive upgrade. You're bringing in almost a brand new defensive coaching staff in terms of coordinator and defensive assistant. I think that you're bringing in a brand new scheme, so there's going to be a lot of trial and error, especially in the early games in the season. And generally, Seattle's a team, especially with Russell Wilson, that starts off hot. So if you're starting off slow, you're going to have to hope that they're getting hot in the later in the season. And they haven't won multiple playoff games, if I'm mistaken, since 2014 in the playoffs. So I think you're looking at I think you're probably looking at a very mediocre-ish record, even in a stacked NFC, because that NFC West is going to be a gauntlet if Jimmy Garoppolo stays. And even if he doesn't, I think Kyle Shanahan should be able to scheme them into maybe one win against the Seahawks. I wouldn't say that they're going to go get a sweep, but I think the Rams are going to be a problem. The Cardinals always seem to take one from Seattle. I think you're looking at what's going to be a very, very difficult. I think, are you guys playing the NFC East this year?
Man, I feel like I should know this. I think we played the NFC East last year.
No, you played us last year.
No, I'm tripping. Yeah,
NFC
we
North.
are. I think we are.
NFC East. So I think you're looking. You're going to be able to get some easy wins in terms of Washington and obviously I think the Giants too. I think Philly could pose you guys some trouble, especially if you're playing early in the year or maybe a new system. A running quarterback like Jalen Hurts certainly can be some sort of mold breaker. And I think that Dallas is going to have a good enough team, depending on hopefully, I don't know if they wind up making some sort of late coaching change or a trade for a guy like Sean Payton. I think that they could wind up actually being dangerous and more than just a team that's going to kind of win their division and wind up getting bounced in the first or second playoff game. But I think that Seattle, they should wind up. I don't see any reason that they wouldn't wind up as maybe a 6 or 7 seed, but I don't think that they're favorites in their division. And I think that although they are, I think probably the 3rd or 4th or 5th best team in the NFC, I think that they're going to have a tough time winning their division, which almost guarantees them being at least a 5 through 7 seed.
Okay. Real quick, Brendan over here is saying that we're facing the NFC South and the AFC West. And so I guess maybe no easy dubs against the NFC East. But then again, given the state of the NFC South, maybe, there's still easy dubs nevertheless.
I think you could still probably wind up getting a few easy wins. I think that the Saints, if they don't have a quarterback, they're not going to be anything too particularly special. I think Atlanta, you're looking at an offseason where you might wind up seeing like a Matt Ryan being in either his last year or getting traded before the season starts. I do think that you probably, the team you might have a little bit of trouble with is going to be Tampa. And if Carolina is able to land Deshaun Watson, how they kind of were predicted to a few years ago, and I feel like if Deshaun Watson eventually starts getting back in the sweepstakes, you're going to kind of see him. But I do think, I think you're probably going to wind up seeing Seattle at anywhere from probably like a 7-10 to 10-7 record.
Man, Emmett, that's crazy that you say that. Let me bring back this comment from my uncle. Seattle 7-10. So you guys are thinking that we're gonna run it back 2 years in a row, 7-10. Are we predicting a Russell Wilson injury or what?
Hey, I'm just gonna say I watched 2 pretty pathetic Packers years back to back, 2017, 2018. 2017, Rodgers hurt his collarbone, so they ran it back in 2018, and they played even worse. So it wouldn't shock me if you're seeing a situation like that. Especially, you might be able to. At the end of the season, if they don't look very great, I think you might be looking at a Pete Carroll leaving the team, and maybe that puts some new juice in the franchise. But I do think that you look at the Seattle's roster building, especially over the past couple of years, they've almost been burning picks. At least with the Rams, they're throwing picks away to get a good player. Seattle just seems to be kind of burning picks, especially if you look at what happened this year with Jamal Adams, and even towards the end of last year a little bit with Jamal Adams, because he played big in that playoff game against the Rams, which you guys wound up ultimately losing. So I think that the roster isn't particularly great, and they do have a lot of cap space, but I think that they're going to have to make a lot of moves in order to be a team that's looked at as a Super Bowl contender or even just a conference championship contender.
Okay. Hey, I like what you're thinking, bro. Honestly, I'm not gonna sit here and act like a homer. I'm not gonna say, oh, Seattle's gonna go to the Super Bowl and whatnot. I think for me, if you had to ask me, I think a wild card, appearance at this point would be optimistic thinking, but also realistic at the same time. I just feel like the Seahawks front office, they will make moves. I know Seattle, like you said, has been burning picks recently. Well, let's burn another one. I think Seattle trades their next first round pick, so not this year but next year, for a Laramie Tunsil. And I feel like by bringing a guy in like him, he's one of the better left tackles in all of the National Football League, and so you bringing him in, that's definitely going to help to stabilize the offensive line. You have a healthy Russell. Hopefully Rashad Penny stays healthy. Maybe Seattle targets a running back or two in the draft. With Rashad Penny at the helm, Seattle averaged 31 plus points a game. Without him, 23. And so we see the difference that having a quality running back in a team's offensive game plan, we see how much that helps Russell Wilson. We see how much that helps Shane Waldron and the rest of the offense. And so I definitely feel like on the defensive side of things as well, Seattle definitely made some strides down the stretch of last year, and hopefully they can keep up that momentum. But real quick, not even real quick, but before we're about to end the show here, bro, sometime within the next 5 to 10 minutes. But if you guys have any questions out there, if you're tuned into the chat, man, if you have any questions, please drop them. My guy, Tony, what's going on, bro? I hope you're doing well, bro. Shout out to you from DC. My uncle right here is saying, I don't trust Pete Carroll and maybe the team won't buy. I think that's valid. But I think with him coming back, that kind of shows a renewed sense of trust. And I feel like this could be a make or break year for Pete Carroll. I know that doesn't seem fair just because of all that he's done for the city of Seattle, all that he's brought to Seattle. But then again, it's what have you done for me lately, right? And Emmett, this is one of my more, not my favorite stat, but it's definitely a stat that sticks with me just because of how awful and terrible it is. But since 2017, the Seattle Seahawks have less playoff victories than the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, that's one that'll get thrown around a lot, won't it? That's
what I'm saying. And so the thing that's crazy to me is that Jacksonville, they got all of those wins too in the same year, and that was when they went to the AFC Championship game against the Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. So they had 2 in that one playoff run. Ever since then, they've been arguably the worst team in football for 3-4 years running, and Seattle has 1 against Josh McCown and the Eagles. And so I really feel like if everyone's healthy this year and Seattle isn't able to at least advance past the divisional, man, we could be on the verge of a complete shakeup. And if Pete Carroll goes, I don't know if that means Russell Wilson goes. But yeah, one more question for you though, Emmett. If Seattle did, or if they were forced to trade Russell Wilson, what team do you think that'd be?
I think you're for sure most likely Seattle would probably want to move him conferences. You'd think probably the AFC, so that of course you're going to have your normal players who are in on all the quarterbacks, which is going to be your Denver. You're going to have your Pittsburghs probably. I think that there was an option that kind of was around for a while, and maybe the Seahawks would wind up entertaining it, and they'd wind up getting just a little bit less in terms of draft capital back. Maybe the Jets would be reaching out if you're a big fan of Zach Wilson. But I don't think that Russell would okay a trade, because I do believe he has a no trade clause. I don't think he'd okay a trade to a horrible roster with the Jets. But I do think you're probably looking at the Broncos if they miss out on an Aaron Rodgers as probably the primary candidate. I think that maybe you could wind up this year, if you really wanted to if you were focused on rebuilding, send them to within the conference to the Giants. I believe the Giants have a couple of picks within the top 10. So I think you could probably two picks within the top 10. I think you could probably wind up doing that. And then honestly, if I was Seattle and I was doing that and I was focused on a rebuild, especially because I don't like this year's quarterback class very much, and I don't think anyone else is too particularly high on it either. I think that you could wind up seeing them deciding, you know what, we'll just trade back. So, you know, the whatever they have, I think they probably have like the 7th and then 10th or something like that. I think you could probably wind up seeing those turning into the 20-something pick, and I would trade back with both and just get a bunch of draft capital and then try to make another run at it within the next or a couple of years from now.
So if Seattle does end up going that route, do you think Pete Carroll sticks around? Seeing as how he's the longest head coach in the National Football League, is he willing to stick around for a rebuild?
I don't think so. I think if you're going to do that, I think you're going to have to move on. And I think honestly, especially with how the league has been, I don't want to feel like I'm one of these analytics nerds, have to go offense, but I think you're most likely going to wind up going with an offensive head coach. Here's a sleeper candidate for you. I've been telling all my friends, Adam Stenavich. He's the offensive coordinator. He just got promoted of the Green Bay Packers. So maybe there is a little homer bias, but he's been great with offensive line development. He's developed people helped continue to develop people like David Bakhtiari, I believe he's still the highest paid left tackle in football. He's developed so much of the other talent like Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers this year. They just put him up to offensive coordinator. I think he's going to have another successful year. And especially I think that he's going to kind of come from that Matt LaFleur coaching tree. So you're going to see a little bit more run-based offense. I think that he would be a fantastic offensive coordinator / head coach for you guys.
Okay, wow. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that name. Andre Dillard for a 3rd or a 4th, Brennan asks. I don't know I think that's a little too high for Andre Dillard. I know he has first-round pedigree, but every time we've seen him on the field, we haven't seen a whole lot to inspire a lot of confidence. I think if he was to be traded from the Philadelphia Eagles, I'd see it I think a late round pick is a more likely scenario. What, a 5th rounder, maybe a 6th rounder gets it done. But
I
from
think you might
Seattle,
even be looking at something like a comp pick if you get some. If one of these free agents goes, I think you could even be looking at something like a prop. Most likely, I think I wouldn't do anything more than a 4th. Most likely a 5th or a 6th though.
5th or, yeah, no doubt. I definitely still think he has potential that's untapped. And maybe a new change of scenery helps him out. Great show, nephew. Let me real quick, Unc, before you go though, you did have a question. Who do you have the Seahawks taking with their first pick? And you do know that the Jets have their 1st round pick. I think for me, if I'm John Schneider, I haven't done all my homework on the upcoming NFL draft yet, but for me, I think the position group that I'd be targeting would definitely be offensive linemen. Whether that's a right tackle, a left tackle, a right guard, or a center. Seattle's first pick is going to be in the 50s. And so I definitely feel like at that stage in the draft, you're not going to find a whole lot of top tier prospects at top tier positions, but you'll see some of the better guards of the draft. You'll see some of the better interior offensive linemen, kind of fall and slip in that range. Crete Humphrey, for those of you that might recall, he went in the 2nd round last year, bottom of the 2nd round, and he ended up being an all-pro in this rookie season. And instead, Seattle took Dwayne Eskridge. And I'm not saying I don't have any sort of confidence in him, but moving forward, I mean, Crete Humphrey is by far the superior pick. Yes, he was coming off a torn ACL, but my gosh, torn ACLs don't scare teams anymore. And so I don't know why it scared off a team like Seattle. But that said, I do still have a whole lot of faith. I still have a whole lot of belief in Dwayne Eskridge. And if Seattle is looking to feature him a lot more, hopefully next year, then hopefully we can make that pick look a lot better just because it looks so bad looking back, at least right now.
I think especially he did not have the usage that I certainly expected for him to have with the Seahawks last year. I think with the first pick that they have this draft, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer that you're going to have to address whatever you don't get in free agency. Because I mean, if you go out there and you get yourself a Teron Armstead or a Cam Robinson and you go out and you get one of those centers and even a solid right tackle, I think you're going to have to go with some sort of position. I think that maybe there's a potential that Gerald Everett might wind up walking, so maybe you can snag yourself a tight end. No, I'm a Coug, but I mean, Cade Otton from UW, he was a very good pass catcher. I think you might wind up seeing him go off the board a little high. And then if you're not able to retain a guy like a DJ Reid or a Sidney Jones, I wouldn't be shocked if they wound up going cornerback just to shore up one of those positions where they don't necessarily have like a guy. I think you have a guy like DJ Reid who's growing into his own. And I think even you saw a bunch of really great highlights from Trent Brown last year. But I think whatever you don't get in free agency, you're going to have to go get in the draft. You're going to have to get somebody that's going to make an impact on this year's football team.
Hey, no doubt, bro. I mean, going back to what you said about Trent Brown, I definitely thought that he was another gem, that Seattle plucked in the 5th round. I know he's another guy that's undersized. Again, 5'9", my height, so that definitely resonates with me. But I'm not really off for Seattle drafting, any corners in the draft, just because I feel like with the amount of cornerback depth that we currently have, DJ Reid 25, Sidney Jones 23, 24, Trent Brown, he's coming off his rookie year, and so he's still very, very young. If I'm Seattle and I'm looking to address cornerback, I'm doing that in free agency or I'm doing that via trade, just because I feel like we have enough youngins. Maybe we could bring in a late round pick at cornerback, but as far as guys that are going to get, significant snaps, significant playing time, I like the young core that we have. And if I'm John Schneider in the draft, I'm addressing running back, offensive line, and defensive line. But that being said, Emmett, we're nearing the end of the show. Again, bro, thank you so much for hopping on. We were supposed to have 2 other guys, hopping in to kind of have some sort of a rotation feel to it throughout the course of the show, but last minute they weren't able to make it. And so I know the plan for you was to kind of, hop in as a part of a rotation, but you ended up staying the entire duration of the show as soon as I brought you on. So, bro, thank you so much for taking the time for not only hopping on here, but, you did the boat with us yesterday. And I just kind of look back to those Highline days, and that was where we met. Like I said at the beginning of the show, at the top of the show, Emmett, we go not way back, but I definitely have known him for a couple of years now. We used to cover sports together over at Highline College, and I always knew from that point on that you were gonna have a future in sports, whether that's journalism or on TV. I don't know what you want to do or however you want to do it, but I do know that whatever you do plan on doing, you will be successful in it, bro. And just going back to those days real quick in the classroom, I felt lonely. I got along with everybody, but I was literally the only person before you came in that had any sort of interest or passion in sports. I loved everybody that was there. Shout out to Professor TM, shout out Mitchell, shout out Eddie, shout out I'm butchering her name already. But do you remember? Izzy? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Izzy, if you're tuning in. Thank you, Emmett. I loved each and every single one of them, and to anybody else I might have forgotten, I still love you. But I didn't have anyone that I could really connect with. Eddie, yeah, but he was more of a baseball guy, and so ever since you came in, I was just like, yo, like just to have another person, in here with me that knows sports, that has a passion for sports, that definitely was such a great feeling. And man, I miss those days. I definitely
it's
think
crazy. It's
right?
so crazy, especially thinking about it now. And it's like when we met, that was pre-COVID.
Yeah,
like,
that's
hard to think of a time that was like before that. But shoot, yeah, I think we do go. I wouldn't say way back, but we go back enough.
And it's crazy, bro, because it's like now you're going to school with Squabo, my brother from another mother, and you guys have 4 classes together. And it's just crazy how life works. God really works in mysterious ways. And I hope you keep doing your thing over there at Washington State, bro. I told Squabo, I was hoping to kind of join you guys. Maybe I was going to find myself over there. And who knows, maybe I will. But right now I'm kind of just taking a break from school and really just trying to focus on, on YouTube and really working, expanding my network. Maybe I might even try to land an internship somewhere. I don't know how hard that's going to be, without currently attending, a school like Wazoo. But, we'll see where that takes me. And, again, Emma, if you have anything that you want to shout out, if you have any plugs, anything you want to talk about, any last minute questions, comments, go for it.
Oh yeah. So social wise, Emmett J. Savoras on Instagram and Twitter. Those are really the only 2 that I use. No, man, but hey, it's been great to be on the past couple of days here and then here with you and then with Squabo yesterday. It's been a fantastic opportunity. I'm very grateful that you guys gave me the opportunity. If you guys ever need, again, as I texted you guys last night, if you guys ever need any sort of sub, you ever have a situation like today where you have some people dropping out due to any sort of unforeseen circumstances, my line's open, and I'm always down to talk whatever, football, basketball, whatever it is.
Hey y'all, well, like I said, Squabo was the one who kind of, kept bugging me to make a YouTube, and then we kept bugging Dylan to make a YouTube. And so, to the audience out there, to the fans, let's do the same for Emmett. Maybe peer pressure will work. Maybe, we'll find him making a YouTube channel one of these days. And so please, show my man some love. Follow my socials. He has a great sports mind. He definitely knows what he's talking about. It's not just football. And like I said, he's a Packers fan, for crying out loud, but he's definitely one of the nicest Packer fans that I know, along with you, Justin, from This Justin, and then my guy, Dwayne, from the Goat Talk podcast with Marcus. Again, to everybody out there that tuned in, to everyone that put in a chat, to all the people that gave me a super chat, thank you so much. I don't really do this live streaming thing a lot, but now that I'm slowly starting to kind of get the groove of things, expect us a whole lot more. I'm hoping to launch a weekly sort of show where I'll have, a rotation of guests, a panel of guests, a different sort of guests that kind of pop in and out on a week-to-week basis. And so you guys will definitely see Emmett a lot more, obviously, as it pertains to his schedule. But whenever he's free and whenever I can get him on, I'll definitely try to get him on here as much as I possibly can. But to everybody out there, Team Steezy family, thank you so much. Again, don't forget to follow him. Follow me on Instagram, Steezy A. Smith, Twitter, same thing. And last but not least, we're on the road to 4K. So if you guys aren't already subscribed, or if you've been watching and you aren't subscribed, tell a friend to tell a friend. Share this channel with your friends or your dog, your parents, whoever it is. But we're on a journey, we're on a mission. So please help us hit 4,000. Run it up. Hey, nobody grinds harder than Calvin. No one, not a single person. No one grinds harder. He's constantly putting out content. He's sending me the links. He is running it up. So please support him on his journey. He's going to be doing great things soon. Hey, my brother, bro. Thank you, bro. That coming from you, that means a lot more than bro. And so again, thank you so much for being on, bro. I look forward to doing this again in the future. To the Team Steezy family out there, that's it for me. Steezy out, Emmett out. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. And that's it for y'all. Again, this video is going to be dedicated to Mr. Todd Nas. While that concludes this video, we have loads of other content. You don't have to stop watching there. Other content on our channel homepage, as well as our social media platforms. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for us. Tell a friend and tell a friend. Nothing but love, and Steezy out.